The canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, portray Jesus prophesying his imminent death on several occasions. The canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, portray Jesus prophesying his imminent death on several occasions. Although historians cannot prove Jesus uttered each and every one of those predictions, they can establish with a high degree of historical certainty that Jesus prophesied his imminent death. How? Let's begin by examining three key texts. And Jesus began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and to rise again after 3 days. And he was stating the matter plainly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning around and seeing his disciples, Jesus rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on God's interests, but man's." There are a number of reasons for regarding this exchange between Jesus and Peter as historical. First, we find two statements that are unlikely inventions of the early church, given their embarrassing nature. Peter has the audacity to rebuke his master Jesus, who in return rebukes Peter, the same disciple who would become the lead apostle in the Jerusalem church, even calling him Satan. It's highly unlikely that Mark or the early Christians would have invented Peter's disrespect of his master, accompanied by Jesus' strong rebuke in return, calling him Satan, since that would only serve to undermine Peter's authority, the very opposite thing the early church would have wanted to do. Thus, the authenticity of Jesus' saying in Mark 8:31 is supported by the criterion of embarrassment. And of course, the report is found in Mark, the earliest gospel written. Jesus was teaching his disciples and telling them, "The Son of Man is delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him, and having been killed, he will be raised after 3 days." The presence of a linguistic pun in this text has led many scholars to recognize the very early period in which it was being reported that Jesus predicted his imminent death. When this saying is translated back into Aramaic, which was Jesus' primary language, it reads, "The Son of Man is to be handed over to the hands of men." This pun, accompanied by a staircase structure, suggests Mark has preserved oral tradition in which Jesus predicted his death, so it is unlikely an invention of Mark. Thus, the authenticity of Jesus' saying in Mark 9:31 is supported by the criterion of early attestation. In a third text, Jesus institutes the Eucharist as a reminder to his disciples that his body and blood were about to be broken and poured out for them. These statements from the Last Supper are supported by primitive tradition in the pre-Pauline material in 1 Corinthians 11 and Luke 22, which has been preserved with striking verbal correspondence in the original Greek. "This is my body, which is for you. Do this in my remembrance. This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink in my remembrance." Paul goes on in the verse that follows to say that participating in the Eucharist is to proclaim Jesus' death. And Hebrews 9:16 tells us something we already know. Before one can inherit what is promised in a will or covenant, a death is required. Independent tradition of Jesus' saying appears in Mark chapter 14. "Take, this is my body. This is my blood of the covenant which is poured out for many. Truly, I tell you, I will not drink again of the fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new in the kingdom of God." It's clear that Luke and Paul drew on a common tradition, and it's very likely that tradition was independent of Mark.